All right, I'm finally here. It took me a while to get through the line, and they had to scan my badge and everything, but now I think I'm all set up and ready to go. How are we doing on scanning people over there? We good? Outstanding. Thank you very much. Well, hi. Thank you very much for coming out today. I'm Mike Hines, and I'm a developer evangelist with Amazon.com. And today I want to tell you guys a story of how I took a perfectly good game and made it absolutely no fun whatsoever. Fortunately, it's not what I do for a living, so I'm okay talking about how I did this. But I'm also going to share with you some of the steps that I did, a couple of the things that I did to try and fix what I had done. So, to start with, my original intent was to give you this amazing presentation of how to make a fun game. And my colleagues at the office, we were all behind this. We thought this was going to be a really good deal. And we wanted to talk about not just the kind of, oh, look at the kitties, that's kind of cute fun, but I mean the kind of fun that gets people to spend longer in your game and have more sessions per day of your game, gets people to talk about your game, that really kind of engaging, all-consuming kind of fun. We were all on board on that. How many people here actually got to go to Wooga's talk yesterday about long-term fun, games that are fun for a year? Okay, that was a fantastic talk. The talk I was going to give you wasn't going to talk about that. It's going to talk more about the game mechanics. And we had our methodology all figured out. We have, in the Amazon App Store, we've got almost 400,000 apps in the App Store. We've got availability in, 236 countries and territories worldwide. We got a lot of stuff. And we can take the top 50 and take a look at what features they have in common, what they do in common. We were going to get a list of the best game feature recommendations from the game design authors, from the game publishers. We actually went so far as to write a reference game that had very few of these, if any of these features, tested it, added the features, tested again, and then we can put together this presentation that shows you exactly how to implement fun features into your game. This was great. Actually, what I'd like to share with you now is the list that we created. It's a pretty big list. I mean, it's a long list. However, it's a great list. The best app developers contributed to this list, and so we're ready to go. I also want to show you the implementation game that we made to go with this. Rock, paper, scissors. Okay, who doesn't know rock, paper, scissors? All right, rock, paper, scissors is universal. Everyone's going to get this game. Everyone loves playing rock, paper, scissors, so why not turn it into a game of tag? You pick your hand, and then if you have the winning hand, you chase around the losing hand, except the losing hand can change. That's right, by hitting a button on the controller, the losing guy can, or the guy who's not going to win, can change into a hand that will win. This is great. We designed it to work on Fire TV and Fire TV Stick. So the two players both have controllers. They're both sitting in front of the same TV screen. And now they're chasing each other around, choosing different hands and trying to run into each other. The first one to 10 points wins. All right. That's not such a bad game, is it? All right. We went ahead and did some testing on this in the office and found out, we wanted to give ourselves a bit of a report card on how fun this was. Not so bad. We're, if you're winning, you have a B+ experience. That's not bad. For the loser, it's not quite as fun. And actually, as a frequent loser in this game, I can tell you why. There was a colleague of ours in the office who we would get to play this game. And she would beat us all the time. I mean, not just beat us by a few points, but absolutely, we would have our lunch handed to us. I mean, the scores were like 8-1, they would be 9-1, then we'd end up like 10-2 or 10-3. And I gotta tell you, it doesn't take many times being at the 3 end of 10-3 before you start not having such a good time being the loser here. I mean, not a big surprise. Everybody needs a realistic chance to win. I mean, how fun do you think this game's going to be for the small guy, right? Not very much fun at all. Even for the big guy, it's not going to be all that much fun. I mean, maybe fun once or twice, but after a while, why bother? So figuring that every player needs to know they've got a realistic chance, a realistic shot at winning, we looked down our list of features, and we thought, what have we got here that's going to help us out? Well, as it turns out, there was a feature on that list, game gravity, or sometimes known as rubber banding. Most often used in racing games, what it does is it helps the player who's farthest behind catch up a little bit, or at least not get any farther behind. Maybe the slick spots on the road aren't quite as slick, or maybe the guardrail is a little more forgiving. But the game mechanics change for that guy who's really far back so that they can, at least see the pack in front of them. There's at least some hope. Not a problem. We can make losers go faster. I like this. This is going to be easy to implement. So that's exactly what we did. If you get behind 8-1, trust me, I'm the pink guy over here with the 1, we make you faster. And if you're faster, it's easier to win. All right, done. We've added a fun feature to our game, right? Well, almost. Okay, so the guy losing has a little bit more fun, but the winner has considerably less fun. All right, truth be told, I still didn't win a whole lot more games because as soon as the speed difference narrowed again, I went back to getting my lunch handed to me. So I still didn't win a lot more, but the scores were a lot closer. So I figured, maybe one of the problems is, our coworker's sitting there with a controller trying to figure out where the turbo button is that somehow I've found. And she's mashing on the controllers, trying to find out which button makes you go faster. Perhaps we need to go ahead and do a version 2 of our game gravity, one that makes a little bit clearer what's going on. So we figured, if when you win you get bigger and slower, okay, that kind of goes together. And that'll kind of explain how the game gravity works in some feedback. So we made you bigger, and we made you slower, and that makes it easier to understand, and that gives us a really great feature. This is not going well. At some point, our tester said, I don't even know why you gave me the joystick anymore. Great, this is not working out well. We actually took a relatively good game, and now I've made it completely unfun. Now, the hard part about this was the feature worked. I mean, we narrowed the gap. At the end of the game, the scores were a lot closer. Empirically, just by gathering the data, this was a successful feature implementation. But when you look at how much fun people had, holy cow, I really tanked this thing. So much for the presentation I was going to give you guys on a fun game. Maybe if we change the title of the presentation. Anyway, what went wrong? What happened? We got the right results, but our players weren't happy. So we decided we were going to take a step back and think more about this. And we were thinking maybe we asked the wrong question. Maybe we need to kind of go back a couple steps and revisit what we're trying to accomplish with making a game fun. So we'll start with what makes a game fun for us? What do I think is fun? If this matches any of you guys, let me see some hands. I like games where it's so fun that I skip meals so that I can play. Yeah, a couple. Every once in a while, I'll forget to go to sleep on time, and it'll get really late, and I'll be playing games. Yeah, and games that, when you finally finish a level, you realize that your leg has been asleep for 20 minutes, and now it really, really hurts. Yeah, okay. Those are fun games, and that's what I want to see. So, you don't get that because something has game gravity. I mean, you don't go to an app store and say, ooh, that has twice as much game gravity. I'm getting that game. You don't shop for games like that. You look for games that are going to that give you that feeling, that make it fun. So instead of having a long list of features that you can implement to get a fun game, would it be possible to implement something that kind of creates a feeling? Well, let's take a look at that. And the audio here is really impressive. So process of the activity. It's really important that we get the process of the activity here. It's not, for example, if you're playing Sudoku, it's not completing the board. The process of the activity is looking at a row or a column and figuring out what number can't go there. And, at first, when I started hearing about this a while ago, I was a little bit skeptical. I was thinking this is just a bunch of psychobabble to explain why people love games, right? But there's actual real science behind this thing. Stephen Coulter for Harvard Business Review actually reviewed a lot of what happens to the brain when the brain is in a state of flow. What he says is that in flow, the brain releases a bunch of chemicals that all affect performance. Norepinephrine and dopamine tighten focus, helping us shut out persistent distractions of our multitask lives. Endorphins block pain, letting us ignore hunger, postpone sleep, and ignore that ache in our backs. Okay, I'll vouch for that one. Anandamide actually helps promote lateral thinking, which greatly assists problem solving. You can get to solve harder problems faster. And then serotonin, which gives you that really good feeling when you've accomplished something or when you've gotten that done. These are all very, very real physiological effects of being in flow. So, can you really design that experience? I mean, isn't this ultimately the experience that we feel when we have fun? I mean, playing games is one thing. Have any of you felt this playing a game? Any of you? Okay, a handful of you. I actually felt it once when I was coding, only once, but it was amazing. I had this nasty problem I needed to solve. I needed to write this complicated algorithm. And as I was writing the algorithm, it was working. And it wasn't just functioning. I mean, it was working quickly. Very few syntax errors. My code just compiled. It was amazing. And I compiled a couple classes and got this thing running, went to the refrigerator to get some milk, and I see my picture on the side of the milk carton. All right, I wasn't gone that long, but I mean, it certainly felt to my family like I was gone that long, because I'd started on a Saturday morning, and by the time I went to get some milk, everyone was already in bed. But that's the kind of effect flow has, and that's what we want our players to have, because that's going to drive the longer sessions, that's going to drive more engagement, that's going to drive higher repeat sessions, and which means more eyeballs on your in-app purchasing opportunities, more eyeballs and ad impressions for your ads, better reviews. This is all kinds of goodness. How do you build that into a game, though? I mean, how do you build serotonin and anandamides into a game? Well, that's exactly what Jenova Chen did when he was working on his master's degree at USC. He studied Csikszentmihalyi, he studied flow, and he wrote this game specifically to test whether or not flow worked. How well did it go? Well, I'll let you read down there how well it went. But in Chen's words, he actually had some really good insight into this. Flow explains why people prefer certain games more than other games, and how they become addicted to these games. If a game meets all the key conditions of flow, any content could become rewarding. Any premise might become engaging. As long as the conditions of flow are met and the challenge is balanced against skill and difficulty, players can experience flow in the first few moments of playing a game or hundreds of hours later as an expert. Awesome. I like what this guy's done. And let me actually show you his game here. So the game is kind of simple. You are a blue object, and your idea is to chase down things that will make you bigger. The little guy follows your cursor. He doesn't always go exactly where you want him to go, so it's a little bit challenging, but it's just fun enough and hard enough that when you're not actually, come on, get it, okay. And if you're ever wondering where to go next, for example, if you finish eating a bunch of little guys here, you don't have to worry about it, because you see those little black and white splashes? Those are kind of indicators of places you can go to do what's required next in the game. Now, if I'm not careful here, I'm just going to spend my whole time demoing this really great game and building up this really long, adorable, multi-segmented creature. In any case, the game was fun. It's a neat experience, and it proves that you can actually implement some of the characteristics of flow in a game. Again, his results speak for themselves. So what do I need to do in order to get rock, paper, scissors fun again? Well, you know what I want to do? I want to create a flow gradebook. I want to get some flow into this game so that people can kind of lose themselves in that. Now, okay, we need to start somewhere. So fortunately, Csikszentmihalyi High created a list of conditions that facilitate flow. Now, Csikszentmihalyi High wasn't a gamer. He didn't do a lot of development. But fortunately, Genova Chen and a handful of other researchers I've read did study the application of flow to games. And with their help, we're going to go ahead and break out Csikszentmihalyi High's conditions to be relevant to game developers and game designers. And the first one is clear goals. It's really important to have clear objectives. Obviously, if you don't know what you're supposed to be doing, it's really hard to get it done, and you can't really be in a state of flow if you're wondering about that. For games like Flappy Birds and Crossy Road, it's pretty simple. I mean, it's a very straightforward game. You kind of get what the objective is. For games more like Halo and Skyrim, it's a little more complicated, but those games do a really good job of giving you a task list of quests that you need to go after. And each quest is segmented into a bunch of different goals that you have. And even when you're in the middle of a dungeon, hacking your way through a bunch of skeletons and other bad guys, if you forget where in that dungeon you're supposed to go, you don't have to exit a flow state and get back to a map or a menu. Because Bethesda did something really clever. They gave you a way to get to your goal while you're in flow. It's a spell called Clairvoyance. It's cheap to cast, and it actually draws this mystical glowing line through the dungeon that you can follow to get to where you're supposed to go. So in that game, it's easy to stay in flow. You know, there's plenty of 3 a.m. mornings, I'll attest to that, because you never lose track of what the object is. The other thing about goals is you've got to be able to impact them. If what you do as a player doesn't have any impact on the goals, why even bother? For example, if you've been playing a racing game and you want to see what happens when you drive off a bridge, but it won't let you drive off the bridge. It course corrects you back onto the road. And you pretty much figure that you can sit there and do completely random things with the joystick and you still finish the race? Really? Why am I playing this if my actions don't have any consequences? There's got to be impact associated with that, or it's just not going to be fun. Second, distractions. Yes, I intentionally chose a very distracting picture for my slide on distractions. You're not really quite sure what to look at. There's a whole bunch of stuff competing for your attention, but you're not really sure what it means, but you're going to try and figure that out. At the same time, you completely forget to look at all the things about distractions. Well, let me go ahead and walk through those for you. The game controller. This is something that was pretty consistent with all of the people who've written about flow in games, and also something that was pretty consistent in a lot of the top 50 game devs, is if the user doesn't have mastery over the game controls, they're going to be fighting with the controls as much as they're actually playing in the game. I have a personal experience with this. My son happens to be a Madden football huge fan. He wanted to play a game with me. This is great. He tosses me the controller, shows me how to do a few things. I get the controller, the ball snaps, and I have no idea what I'm doing. I don't know what buttons do what and when. Apparently some buttons do something when the quarterback has the ball. The same buttons do something else after the quarterback throws the ball. I'm sitting here fighting with the controller. Meanwhile, he's racking up the score, and it looks like the Denver-Seattle Super Bowl. Not fun for me. You know what? I haven't played with them since. Okay, bad dad, I know. And it's not EA's fault. EA has a really magnificent tutorial that teaches you step by step how to do these things. And it's a pass-fail kind of thing. If you don't demonstrate that you can use it correctly, they'll let you do that tutorial again. So good on them for doing that. Bad on me for not taking the tutorial. Second thing are rules. If the rules seem arbitrary and capricious, if the rules are unfair, you're really going to have a hard time playing the game. And as it turns out, this is universal, including a game played by 2 monkeys and a researcher. Now, this is a fun game. Well, okay, if you're a monkey, it's a fun game. The researcher puts a rock in the monkey's cage. The monkey gets the rock, gives it back to the researcher, and then the researcher gives the monkey a melon. Great game. These guys have played it quite a lot. They're good at it. Except the rules are going to change. The monkey on the right-hand side is going to get a grape instead of a melon. Let's see how well that works out. So this monkey gives back the rock. Monkey gets a melon. Melon is good. This monkey has to go get the rock. Good boy. Gives the rock back. And now the monkey gets a grape. Oh, that's cool. Rock goes in. Rock comes back. Monkey gets a grape. No, melon. Not okay. Let's try this one more time. Go get the rock. Give the rock back. Grape. This is sweet. All right. Monkey gets the rock. Is this a real rock? Bang, bang, bang. Yeah, it's a rock. Give it back. Get a grape, right? Melon. All right. Now I know why the people I was playing the game with felt like throwing the controller back at me. When we all of a sudden made her slow or made her big and took away all of her impact in the game, we changed the rules. We didn't explain why this was happening. We didn't explain that this was part of the game. We just sort of arbitrarily changed the rules on her so that for no reason whatsoever, this bad stuff happened. Boy, talk about a way to really upset your players. All right, third thing is irrelevant information. Irrelevant information, particularly irrelevant feedback, is distracting. There is only so much attention that a user has to pay attention to what's going on and to focus on the game. It's like a fuel tank. And if you start taking out stuff or if you start demanding attention on other things, it's going to take a user out of a state of flow. So if you're playing a word game and you've got like 8 seconds left to make 3 or 4 more words before the timer runs out, now is the wrong time to say, you've got a chat waiting. You're distracting me. This is attention that I need to be focusing on the game, and you're just taking that attention away from me. And so I was thinking about what a good example would be to show you guys. So I went up to Google and I did a search for distracting UI. Actually, yeah, you should, if you're keen on this, you should go ahead and do a Google search for distracting UI. It's kind of fun to see what people out there actually tag as distracting. Now, in all fairness to World of Warcraft has a really nice, clean UI, and a lot of people get into flow with World of Warcraft. Most of what you see here, self-inflicted damage. People go ahead and add all of this stuff to their UI and then completely get distracted in what they're supposed to be doing. So go ahead and do that. It's actually kind of fun to do that. The third condition is immediate feedback. All right, this is kind of a pet peeve of mine. Advice is not feedback. Advice is put on the goggles to see the invisible bad guys, or combine all of your 3s before you combine any of your 4s. And feedback is really good when you want to give it to the user to help them past a blocking issue. For example, if you're having trouble getting past a certain level after you've died in the level, now would be a good time to offer some feedback. Or if you can't finish the puzzle in time, now is a good time to offer feedback or give advice. But advice is not feedback. Feedback is information right here, right now, on how we're doing in our efforts to reach a goal. So if you're playing tennis and you hit the ball, you see that it lands in or out and by how much it lands in or out. That's really good feedback. It's got to be actionable, too. Imagine if the line weren't there in the tennis game and you just had a buzzer going off that said in or out. Well, thank you very much, but I don't know what to change. I don't know whether to hit it shorter or farther towards the center of the court. I don't know what to do, so thank you for the feedback, but it's not actionable. Timely feedback is also important, particularly if you're shooting fire arrows at a flame dragon. Maybe you get the feedback that your arrows are hitting, but you're not getting any feedback on whether the arrows are doing any good or not. And at the time you die, you finally get the feedback that, oh, by the way, don't shoot fire arrows at a flame dragon, you need to use cold. Okay, could have used that information a little bit earlier. So it's got to be something in time that I can take action on. In flow, people are looking at these things in milliseconds. They get the feedback and they make changes milliseconds later to make it actually immediately relevant. 4, balance perceived difficulties and skills. This is particularly important. Arthur Marr, who was formerly of Bell Labs, noticed that there are intense and ecstatic flow experiences commonly reported among individuals absorbed in demanding tasks with critical implications. Well, I mean, this would explain why games don't get you in flow if they're too easy or they take too much control away from you. There's got to be a real serious consequence if you don't do it right, but it's got to be just barely achievable. So this is a big deal that we're going to have to work with for good old rock, paper, scissors here. So now, if we take all of those factors, we put those into a grade book, now we have our 4 conditions for flow, how they relate to games, and I've got a tool that I can finally use on rock, paper, scissors. And with this tool, there's a shot that I can actually make rock, paper, scissors fun again. And I'm looking forward to this. So, what am I going to do? I'm going to see how rock, paper, scissors actually checks out against our flow grade book. All right, let's look at clear goals. Objectives. You know, rock, paper, scissors is a pretty simple game. Everybody gets it. Well, almost everybody gets it. The only thing we don't do is kind of explain the goal of being able to change change your hand and change the cooldown timer. So, you know, maybe we could have done a little bit better on that. We don't tell you that you played at 10 points, so that's not really clear. We'll give ourselves a B- on that. How about impact? Yeah, that's pretty bad because, you know what, when your player says, why did you even give me a joystick, that's a signal that you're not giving them a lot of impact. Few distractions. Game controls. Game controls we did okay when you figured it out. I mean, the joystick part was pretty easy, but people had to do a lot of button mashing to figure out which button actually turned you into a rock, paper, or scissors. And then we also had a user trying to figure out where the turbo button was. So we'll give ourselves a C on that. Rules. Yeah, we completely failed on rules. We never told anyone why we were making you slower all of a sudden. We never told, we never said why the other monkey was getting a grape. And we owe our users that. So we get definitely a fail on that. Okay, we do get a really good grade, though, on irrelevant information, because there is no irrelevant information here. Everything here is directly related to if you're going to win this match or not. We don't have shiny effects. We don't have a fancy background. We don't have chat windows. It's great. And our feedback is actually pretty good, too. Everything you see is going to be directly indicative of your ability to win the next round. I mean, the only thing that is not immediately relevant to winning this round is the score. And since we keep the score kind of up and out of your way, it's not distracting. We get an A on that. The action is also all actionable. As a matter of fact, you need all of this data to be actionable in order to win. We do a great job of that. And you get the information exactly when you need it, too. So we get an A for timely feedback. Finally, I've aced a subject. This is great. Next is perceived difficulty. Well, perceived difficulty is kind of hard. We do measure and adjust the game. I mean, we added game gravity and all that. We just did it poorly. We didn't do it well. There's probably a much better way we could do this. I'm just not sure how that is. I'm not sure what variables to use. We're going to give ourselves a B on that. But now I can start fixing things. So what do I want to fix first? Well, some of these things are going to be pretty easy. I can take some of my worst grades, and we can fix this stuff with documentation, right? If I actually, when we were building the game, if we'd actually stopped and thought that it may not be as easy as Flappy Bird or Crossy Roads, we could have actually put in a legend for the controller and a little bit about the rules. Easy enough to do. I'm not going to worry too much about those documentation fixes. But I've still got 2 grades that I want to improve here. These are going to be harder to fix, primarily because I want them to be programmatic adjustments during the game. I want them to fix on the fly. They're also going to be hard because I don't know how much needs fixing. For example, impact. Obviously, if I make the player too slow, they're going to get bored and they're going to leave. So I need to figure out how slow is too slow. I don't know. But you know what? That's okay because I can test that. For measuring difficulty, I have to measure perceived difficulty against perceived skill. Holy cow. I can't plug into people's brains and measure their endocrine levels. How are you going to measure how a player feels? So I'm not going to measure how a player feels. I'm going to measure proxies. So if a player is out of flow or out of balance in a game, what are they going to do? Well, they're probably going to have a higher abandon rate before the game is over. There's probably going to be a much bigger score between the winner and the loser by the end of the game. They're probably not going to start a new game right after they finish an old game. If they're not in flow, they're less incented to do that. And they're probably not going to open my game as many times during a day. These things I can measure. And if I can improve my metrics on these things, I'll use that as a proxy for actually doing a little bit better in flow. So now I'm going to have some quantifiable data to go with my qualified gradebook data. So what can I change? What levers do I have in my game? Well, I can change the speed differential between the winning player and the losing player. I can change when to implement that speed change. Is it after 1 point difference, 2 point differences, 3 point differences? I can also change how slow is and make sure that it doesn't get too slow. I'm not sure what that number is, but we'll get to that in a sec. I can also change a cooldown timer. So if the losing player actually has a faster cooldown timer, that might help them win. So these are all levers that I have. It's good to have levers. But the thing is, I don't know how much to pull the levers or in what combination to pull them. So one of the things that I learned from doing the research into the top 50 games was that all of the top 50 games, well, they don't guess what the right thing is. They know what the right thing is because they've been testing it. They've been doing A/B testing. For those of you who aren't that familiar with A/B testing, it's actually pretty straightforward. There are a lot of A/B testing services out there in which you can identify a variable in your game, and let's say minimum speed is a variable I care about, so we'll pick minimum speed. And I can try 3 different variables among 3 different groups of my customers. So I'll have variant 1 be 40% of original speed, 50% of original speed, and variant C will be 60% of original speed. And when my game is distributed to customers in the App Store, a third of them will get variation A, a third will get B, and a third will get C. Then it'll track results against those things I care about measuring, abandon rate, subsequent games, those things that I care about. And it'll go ahead and it'll tell me which variant actually is making the best positive impact on those. So this is going to be super valuable. Now, how do you implement this? Well, first of all, I'm going to take my speed differential. And I'm going to say, I'm going to write an algorithm that's basically for every point delta over 2, I'm going to make the speed difference between the 2 players either 1, 3, or 5%. So if you're playing with me and you are 2 points ahead of me, we're not going to do anything because there's no point difference over 2. But if I'm playing with you and you're 5 points ahead of me, well, that's a 3-point difference over 2. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take we're going to multiply the 3 by either 1, so you'll be 3% slower, 9% slower, or 15% slower. Of course, 2 is kind of an arbitrary value. I can actually test that as well. So I'm going to create a second A/B test, and I'm going to test the trigger point. I'm going to say for every point over 1, every point over 2, or every point over 3, we're going to implement the speed changes. And it may very well be that the best combination is for points in excess of 3, we want to do the 1% change. So we can go ahead and see which combination is working best. Now, how slow is too slow? Well, let's try 40, 50, and 60% and see what kind of a difference that makes. Cooldown time. Well, actually, I'm not sure I want to change cooldown time. So I want to test no change in cooldown time along with a 3% change and a 5% change. Now, I'm going to measure all of these against those proxy variables, or proxy measurements that I told you about, abandon rate, score delta, new games, and additional sessions. And I'm going to figure out which variables are best to improve all of these things. And then when I figure out which variables work, you know what? I don't have to recompile anything. I don't have to rewrite code. I just go back up to the A/B testing service, and I select which variables I want everybody to use. You press a button, and all of a sudden, everybody who's ever downloaded your game now will use the optimal variables, and everyone who ever downloads your game in the future will use the optimal variables. So now I'm done. I've got a rock, paper, scissors 2.0 that is actually fully instrumented and will adapt itself dynamically to support, hopefully, really good flow experiences. Hopefully, I'm going to see that I'm getting a full set of A's on my flow gradebook. With a full set of A's on my flow gradebook, hopefully I'm getting a full set of A's on my fun grade book, you know what happens then? I can actually give you guys a presentation and show you how to make a fun game. So I'm actually really looking forward to being able to tell you how well all of this works. Thank you very much for your time here this evening. Oh, by the way, please do fill out the survey. Let us know if this content is something that you liked, whether you liked the presentation. If you're interested in any of the services I talked about, you can find the links to them up here. And please be sure to go to the survey and let us know how we did. Thank you guys very much. You safe? Yeah. Mm-hmm.